but they weren't going to tell a bunch of 20 somethings that we can't do it because, they're trying to sun you, right? They're like, hey, all right, you had your fun, go get away from here. I'm like, no, that's not how this works.
And this is just our second ever Black Cup chat. So we say thank you for being part of the pioneering of us starting this out. So thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
I guess we'll start out with this. You're a successful executive producer, director. You've worked on so many notable shows, from The Love of Ray J to The Bad Girls Club. One of my personal favorite things you worked on was Road Rules. I used to watch that with my sister all the time growing up. I'm curious, how did you navigate the industry so successfully? How did you go about just going from show to show?
Well, I tell everybody the same thing. First off, you got to be really working on your craft and understand what your craft is, right? When I was younger, when I was 15, 14, I did monster movies in my backyard, but I also really took a big interest in storytelling in general, like really, breaking down Shakespeare, breaking down other playwrights, breaking down movies I loved, right? Because it's really important that you understand the basics of telling a story. And that would be in anything, right? If you're a football player, you got to know how to run the offense, right? So the coach calls a run to the right and you're running left, it's a problem. And so what happens is people try to do the shortcut. Well, I know what story is because I saw a TV show. I'm like, well, do you understand what the goals were in the show? Or more importantly, what were the technical points of the writing that got us from one point to another? So the first thing was, for me, understanding, really being a nerd about story and storytelling was a big part of that. Because how that really worked was that whether you're doing, some ladies who are a bit ratchet, or you're doing something super high gloss, like I did a men's fashion designer in England. They all have a story to tell, and you as a storyteller have to recognize what those moments are. And so because you have that ability to understand that, recognize it, film it, bring it to life in the story, then you're able to be trusted to work from show to show, because that's a big part of it. And I think that that's something that I think a lot of people don't put that emphasis on.
No, it's true. And I play football, so I definitely know what you're talking about watching film. About, if you want to do better,
Yeah.
you got to watch the players that you admire. I'm curious, because you were talking about like doing monster movies like in your backyard and doing stuff like that. How did you get started, and who were the people that you looked to, or what were the things that you watched that really drew you into the industry?
Man, we were lucky. Because I told you, we lived on Lake Erie outside of Cleveland when I was a young kid. But the one benefit was that at a very young age, we were one of the first people to get cable TV. And so we lived in a split level house. My dad was working at the steel mill. My mom was working at a place, and it wasn't super fancy. But the one thing, I had the whole downstairs to myself. And because of that, I watched a lot of TV. I watched a lot of television. I was a big fan of watching shows and seeing stuff. I just remember watching Sanford and Son, or watching, Hogan's Heroes, or watching movies, or watching Kung Fu. And my dad, because he was a very blue collar guy, always kind of worked at night. So I'd stay up till, midnight watching Monday Night Football or whatever. And so just watching a lot of stuff, and, you really it kind of calls to you. You start gravitating to it, right? And then you start reading the books and you start reading the pieces. But I tell people I'm a child of pop culture. My parents always had the popular music of the day, between Jimi Hendrix and the Jacksons and anything they had. I think I always loved movies. When my dad got laid off from the steel mill, and we went and saw Apocalypse Now in the movie theater. I had to be about 7 years old, and went and saw Dirty Harry and all those things. So for me, looking at the stories and what those stories were, felt a natural gravitation. And then you get curious. One quick story I'll share with you is that I was once flying on an airplane, and I like the window. I like looking out the window. And this lady, I think she was just trying to be comforting, said, "Are you afraid to fly?" I go, No, I've just made a living looking out the window all my life. I always imagine what people were doing, and when I was driving out the window and looking, imagining what their life was in that moment, imagining what that thing was, and so I'd have my own kind of reality to it. And so, I think that's part of just being a storyteller and having that ability to take a look at the situation and go, man, what's their reality today? What's the thing they're trying to overcome? And then probably the biggest influence I had was my grandmother, who taught at Bowling Green in Ohio. She turned me on to a series with Bill Moyers, and when I watched it when it first came on was Joseph Campbell. She goes, I think you'll really enjoy Joseph Campbell and the story of the hero of a thousand faces. And I loved it because I was a big fan of, Greek mythology and all the gods and all that. And then you learn, all those pieces. And that really, these stories have been told through generations, lifetimes, whether through the Hindi or through Chinese or through the Greeks or through the Romans or through, the African nations, whatever it may be. These stories all kind of had the same things to them. And so you're right. You're like, wow, a story can be told many different ways, but with a lot of the same themes. And I thought that was really cool, personally. So, when I go into a situation, whether it's dealing, with different ethnicities or different elements, I'm always looking at like, hey, what's their problem today, and how does that relate to my problem today? And so, I would say that Joseph Campbell series on PBS with Bill Moyers was really, really influential because what he said just resonated with me, and I was all of 10 years old or whatever the hell I was.
Yeah. No, yeah. So it's great to hear that because it appears as though you've been imagining this life. Like you've been, like you said, you're a child of pop culture. You've been immersed in this culture for so long. Like the story on the airplane where you just looking out the window, not because you were scared, but because you were imagining. I think that speaks so much to the creative process and how creatives just approach work and how they dream like their future would be. I'm curious, like in your imagining of what the lifestyle of a production would be. How did your expectations, go against your reality? Like, so what did you expect versus what did you actually experience when working on your first production?
Well, I would tell you that part of it is your personality. I mean, I've just quite frankly been a leader all my life, right? So when I was in high school, I was, vice president. When I was in these clubs, when I was fraternity, I was a president. So what you learn is that everybody has a role to play, and that role of producer is making stuff happen. Like you have to make stuff happen because if you're waiting for everybody else, you're going to be in big trouble. So what you learn is, and I tell people that when you're on a set and you're kind of in charge, you're really kind of like a maitre d' at a restaurant, right? So that the client comes in, they want to have peanut butter and lobster. So you go back to the chefs in the back, and they're like, peanut butter and lobster. Man, they're paying for peanut butter and lobster. Let's make them peanut butter and lobster, but let's make them the best peanut butter and lobster they've ever had, right? Because ultimately the client is going to dictate the creative element to it, right? As much as you would love to do this, you can't, right? You have to do that. Now, some people are successful enough to write their own stories and get things done, but that's, really, that makes it a hobby, is writing your own things. A profession is doing a task by somebody else. So for me, getting on set, the first thing I realized was that time was money, right? Money is important. So I have to fit these creative ideas into the financial structure of what I have. So my goal is, okay, so how do I make this dollar look like $100? Okay. And how do I make this lack of resources be a style element that can actually make people go, damn, that was pretty creative? And you're like, no, we're just broke. Right. But they think it's the most creative thing in the world because you took a negative and turned it into a positive. Right. So, you look at all those things and that's where your creative brain and your financial brain come together, and you're able to look at that and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Right. All right. We have crappy cameras. Let's just shoot all black and white. Why? Because you know what? The grain and all that, nobody's really going to know the difference. It's black and white. They won't know we have crappy cameras with crappy ISOs and not a lot of megapixels. So maybe we should just make it feel like we meant it to be black and white the entire time. Right.
Yeah.
So when you do those things, you're making those kind of creative choices. And so, that's always a really tough thing for people to understand. They're like, well, they get stuck in a box. And I think on set, I've just learned to go, okay, what are we making? All right, we're doing road rules. We're doing 5 people traveling across country. We have a crew of 13 people. How are we going to do that? I'm like, okay, well, to me, it's a math problem, right? So you go, okay, a half-hour show is basically 14 scenes. I already kind of know what 10 of them are, right? We know we have to start something. We have to do a mission. They have to do this. We have to wrap it up. Blah, 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 blah. So what are those 4 scenes that we're getting that are outside of that? So then you kind of put that. So when I first went on the set, I was just good at putting the equation together, like going, oh, okay, all right, we got this, this, and this. We got to do that in this time frame. All right, let's do it. And so you quickly are able to just kind of piece it together, and it blows some people's minds. Some people don't understand that. And then the last thing is, I'll tell people all the time, when I first started, I was good with the details. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm really good at the little details. It's the little details that get you in trouble all the time, right? You're not following through. You're not reading the thing. You're not paying attention to what the client's telling you. And some people, get a little knuckleheaded about it, right? They're like, well, I know better. I'm like, well, that's the difference between doing it yourself and doing it for somebody else who's paying you. And usually 8 out of 10 times, you can do it yourself in the guise of doing it like they want. You just got to know, you got to frame it that way.
True. I think you spoke about a lot of great things. The little details, making those decisions, working with what you have. I feel like that's like the ultimate, the tool, being able to finesse situations in order to come out with the outcome that you want. Now, I want to shift gears a bit, kind of along those lines. I wonder what your average work day is like, and I know because of COVID, things may have changed a bit in terms of where you work or how you do things. If so, share with us how your average work day is. How it was before COVID or after COVID. You know what I mean? And just in general, I guess what goes into a production. What are the decisions that you have to make or that you face when doing a production?
Yeah, listen, a preparation for every day is going to be, what are you shooting that day, right? You have a definitive list of action items that you're shooting. Action items in scripted world could be pages. Am I shooting 10 pages today? Am I shooting 5 pages today? Do I have time to shoot 10 pages? Do I have time to shoot 5 pages? In reality, action items could be events that are happening that particular day, right? So you're trying to track a story or you're trying to track a personality. So just being prepared of what that day is entailing is going to be the first part. And how do you fit it into that time frame? I don't think COVID really affects it as much, short of the preparation outside of that, just due to the fact that your team has to get COVID tests, and if someone tests positive, you may be delayed that day. So all those things really are external to the creative process, right? Because when you go into the creative process, you're really looking at, what am I shooting today? How am I doing this in a timely manner, right? Because in the real workplace, you have overtime, and people don't like overtime because they don't want to pay for overtime, right? So, you can't just go, oh, well, we're going to shoot for 16 hours today. One, you get a crew mutiny. 2, the network's going to, like, you can't be shooting 16 hours. We're not paying, 4 hours of overtime, right? So are you being realistic? But all of that doesn't go that day either. It goes back to when you first make the schedule. Right? You have to be a little bit, I call a master of space and time. You have to look at your entire week and go, hey, is this realistic every day? We're going to be trying to shoot 8 pages, 9 pages a day. Okay, we have company moves, we have this, we have that. Do they have to be adjusted? So the first thing I always do in the day is just I do a quick recap of what I'm shooting, what has to get done. Do I see any problems that I can go, man, for the last 5 days, we've not hit 9 pages every day. How's today going to be any different? Oh, it's not. So maybe we need to start making adjustments, and maybe we need to start looking at this a little bit differently with the team, right? And then we can make adjustments. Because, the one thing I say in making stuff is that you have to be unwavering in your goal, but flexible in your approach, right? You're going to make a thing, but you have to be a little flexible. You have to say, hey, man, I'm killing the crew. How can we either shave off scenes or add on time, right? That we can all make it balance out. So preparation, I think, is the key to going into the day. And then you have to have little check marks through the day and say, hey, am I hitting the day? Am I hitting at the quarter mark? Am I hitting it halfway through? Am I hitting it 3/4? Are we going to finish on time? Can I finish early today that I can bank some goodwill for tomorrow, where I know it's going to be a crazy day, right? So all those things, you're constantly, once again, I said nothing creative there. I said everything about managing space and time, right? Space and time to match the creative that we got going on. Then when you're dealing with actors or you're dealing with reality people, is where's it, they may be having a bad day. And how's that affecting your space and time?
Yeah.
Right. The actress may not want to come out of her trailer for a half hour because she's having a personal moment. The reality couple may be having a meltdown because, they've been away from their family for, 28 days. And people have meltdowns. They have real emotional, real moments. So now you're playing psychologist, right? No, you look great in that dress. It's going to look really great in you. I hate copper. Well, how do you get there? No, you know what? Your family loves you. You knew what we're doing. Like, hey, why don't you text them? Something that can get them off of the place that they were at, to get them to a place where you need to be at, which is, focused on it. The one thing I can tell you about the reality side of it is people do not know how much hard work it is. They all think it's easy. They all think you come in and get it done. And then they go, man, this is work. I'm like, yeah, it's work. Because being emotionally invested in that time 24/7, people just don't live their lives that way, right? So, once they realize, the first week's usually a honeymoon. The second week is usually, oh man, this is a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. The third week is, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It's like a cyclical element. The fourth week is you kind of talk them off the ledge, and you remind them that I say to them, I go, listen, man, I don't know if you believe in a higher spirit or higher being, but whatever it is brought you to this point. This is a life experience you cannot buy and get ever again, right? You can't pay for me. You can't pay for this crew. You can't pay for this journey. Like, you'll never get that again. So embrace it. Say, this is a life experience that the man upstairs or the woman upstairs, or whatever your belief is, has put me in, that I can never have again. And so those are, it's not, and they say they're tricks. I'm like, they're not tricks. They're really the truth.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This moment in time is being brought together by something, and whatever we're here to hear, but there is a price to pay for it.
No, it's true. I like how you're talking about the being grateful for the moment. You know what I mean? I read this book called Own the Moment, which kind of talked about just, being cognizant of where you are in life and how you can maximize on your surroundings and your resources and such. I so many good things, man. I think you speaking about adjusting and being able to adjust is so key. And I think the industry is doing that right now. They're adjusting to the landscape. They have no choice. People still want to engage with content, but now we're doing it differently. I think what HBO did, it may be groundbreaking in a sense that a lot of their movies are being released on TV at the same time as theater. I'll never forget my freshman year of college. We had a guest speaker who worked at DreamWorks, and he said one day in the future, going to the movie is going to be almost like going to a basketball game or a football game. Like, when you go there in person, it's going to need to be engaging in a sense, because they'll release at the same time on TV, so it'll need to be more engaging when you actually get there in person. I say all this to say, so the industry, it looks to be changing. It looks like things are going to change in the future. In your personal opinion, what direction do you think the industry is going? How do you think it's evolving? How do you think it's changing? How do you think it will look in the future?
Well, how we're watching things is smaller, right? We're not watching stuff on TVs anymore. We're not necessarily watching live television anymore, other than sports, right? So we know that the viewing screen is getting smaller. We know that it's becoming more on demand. with all the streamers and all that's going on. We know that storytelling is never going to be out of style. That's why I keep telling you, be a storyteller, because they need stories. Whether I'm watching it on my phone, on my iPad, or on my computer, or my 85-inch TV, there's got to be a story there for content. So now, the one thing I would say that people have been investing a lot in AR and VR and all that. I'm like, I don't know, because at the end of the day, people are lazy. They just want to pop their phone on. I just want to watch the guy smashing stuff on YouTube, right? So I wouldn't even say the quality is important, because in the end, it's not. People are watching stuff on Zooms. People are watching stuff doing it there. So I just think filling the content void is going to be super important, and understand that characters are evolving and all that. I think the movie going experience will always be there, because it's not just going to a movie. You're going out with a night on the town with your spouse or your girlfriend or whatever it may be. And I think that's an important element of what's going on. That's why, it's making people stir crazy. Now there could be some added elements to it. Like I know in like sports games, you're going to have like augmented reality, where you're going to see people's live stats on these glass screens, in places where you can bet and you can put information. You're going to get the live up to dates. You can do a lot of crazy stuff. Like they're building all that technology. I think for the movie going experience, you might have a little bit more, right? You're seeing more of the iPics of the world, where you're going with a recliner and a blankie and all that. And I think you're going to have to do things that are going to get people out to kind of see those things. I'm not surprised to see, movies being dropped on HBO Max or being dropped in the movie theaters. Quite frankly, some of these movies, I'm glad you don't have to pay for, because they're not very good. But I watched it, and there was a movie I watched in the last week that I said that about, that I won't tell you about, but I can tell you that it's a very in vogue movie this week, that I'm like, thank God I didn't spend $24 to watch the same movie. You know what I mean? But because it was on HBO Max and I have HBO Max, I watched it, right? And I think that may actually yield a greater viewing experience for more things that maybe some people are not turned on to or turned off to. So, I think it can work in a lot of different ways. And I think in the end, there's always going to be a need. There's a reason why the telecom companies are buying movie studios and content, because they understand that telecommunications, whether through your phone, is not just about, calling one person or another. It is about the content they can provide on your phone, on your tablet, in other places. That's why AT&T owns DirecTV. That's why Comcast and, Verizon and all those companies, or, Comcast, bought NBC. There's a reason why they're doing this. These guys are making big plays. They know that content is something that you and I are going to consume, and that's going to be very important. For the industry part of it, of like, well, who are the people that are going to benefit, right? I would say the first thing you're going to be, all depends on what your skill set is. If your skill set is editing, okay, then you'll have a career in editing. If your skill set is writing, TV, as much as I talk about storytelling, I could not go to get a job on a sitcom because I'm not a writer. They're gonna look at me and they'll laugh. So if you want to be a writer, then you got to go be a writer, and you got to put your time in, right? If you're going to be a production company and produce things, then you have to combine the packaging of the deck to the execution of the creative to those elements, like you're trying to do now, right? Because that if you execute at a high level and you do really well, you're going to get more jobs and you get more opportunities, because people are going to go, damn, I like working with them, and they're at a reasonable cost, and they give me a product that makes it feel 10x. So all those things, that's where people's business hats really come into play, and have to understand that this is a business. This is 100% a business. It's not a hobby. And so, you better have your business hat on, because that's going to put you in position to do stuff that you can do.
True. No, yeah, I think it's all about figuring out, what you can do, what you do well. To your point, you gotta. I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You gotta hone your craft. You know what I mean? So, but
But I'll add to that. Not to interrupt you, but I'll add to that is that honing your craft means that if you have a basic understanding and you're the line producer of story, let's say you really kind of you're nerded out on Shakespeare and all that, but you're a line producer, right? Line producers are in charge of money. It's important that you, as a line producer, understand story, so that you can be a benefit to the production to say, oh man, I understand why they want that, because I understand the story they're trying to tell. Not like, I don't want an accountant being my line producer, because I go, bro, don't worry about the money. We don't make the best movie, we're gonna make no more movies. Right? So that's why it's important that everybody, whether you're an editor, whether you're a producer, whether you're an accountant, whether you're the production coordinator, you have to understand we all have to be making the same movie. We have to understand what we're making. If we don't have a fundamental understanding of that, and you're just like, well, I just wanted the job, so I'm good at ordering people lunch, I'm the production coordinator, I don't really want you in my set, because I don't need people to order me lunch. I do need it, but I don't. I want people to go, damn, we're making a movie, or we're making a documentary. And you know what? We're going to order lunch, but we're going to do it in a way that, gets everybody fed and makes everybody feel good. But you know what? It's because we're making a great product, not because I just know how to, call, Jersey Mike's and order like 10 sandwiches. And it's important, because if I don't have a coordinator that wants to be, I want a coordinator to want my job. I want my PAs to want my job, right? I want the production managers to want my job, right? Because that's when you get people that are hungry and they're creative and they bring a great idea. And that's why we say a lot of times, if like, hey, so I have a PA that gets a great idea, I'll listen to it 100%. Why? We're all creative people here, right? I hired creative people to be a part of this process, whatever position you're on there. And if I got a great idea, let's hear it, because I want to hear it. Now we may not do it, but then again, there's, of the 100 ideas I have, we only do 2. Not everybody gets their way, because some people get super offended, like, you didn't hear me. I'm like, I heard you, but I can't do it. So that's how it goes.
No, yeah, that makes sense. That do your job well, but also be cognizant of like the other stuff going on. I find that helps you overall as a storyteller. Just multiple things. And I find 2 storytellers who are doing a fantastic job. Is for me is an honor being able to see what they do in person. Is both Eric and Miles with Black Cub Productions. The content that they're creating, I feel like they're really paving a path for themselves to continue to grow, to continue to expand. I'm curious, like, what attracted you to Black Cub? How did you guys get connected in a sense?
Yeah, so Eric and Miles and I got connected through a mutual friend that I've known for 20 plus years, Professor Les Rose over at Syracuse. Les and his wife Michelle and my wife we've just been friends for 20 years. Les was a national cameraman for CBS in LA. The wives worked together a long time ago. So it really was, connecting them. And then so when I'm always looking for young talent and stuff. So when Les came out, he said, you want to meet Miles and Eric? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then, meeting Miles and Eric, gave us an opportunity to work together on a project that I felt was not going to tax them too much of failure. Because it's hard. You can't put young people in a position of failure or you get in big trouble, right? So it was a good kind of starting point for them to kind of start saying, okay, I got a client, they're responsible. And Eric can tell you, I preach this to them all the time. Got a bad day? They don't care. They want their cut. Girlfriend's mad at you? They don't care. They want their cut. You felt like you've been wrong? They don't care. They want their cut. They don't care. Now they may tell you they're going to care, but they don't care, right? And that's not a negative. It's just a reality you have to face, right? So that's the situation of dealing with real clients that have a real ability to say, hey, we want it, and this is how we want it. Especially if this client is like an advertising client. Those are the worst. They're like, listen, we're the advertisers. We want it. We don't care. So I think on all those things, putting in a position to work on these stuff with the Hill, it's lower risk. It's lower. It can't be that. You can't fail. And I think young people starting out their business need that. You need a place where I'm not going to put you in a position to fail. A lot of times people come to me like, I'm ready for a promotion. I'm like, you're not ready for the promotion. Well, I've been doing this for 6 months. I'm like, yeah, well, that's not enough. And they get mad at you. Then you see them, 2 years later, I'm like, wow, you were really right. I go, yeah, it wasn't meant to hurt you. Because remember, if I give you a promotion, I'm expecting more.
Yeah.
Right. Every promotion you get, I expect more with less handholding. So that means if I call you, if you go from whatever to an associate producer, you got the word producer in your title, so you better produce.
Yeah.
Right. The teaching starts sliding off. He's like going, hey man, we're all, I ain't got time to teach. I ain't got time. And that's where you want to bring people along in success, put them in a good position. They learn from it. And then as things move up and progress, you can say, hey, I definitely get that. I understand that. And I said, listen, doesn't mean that you can go out and write the world's best screenplay tomorrow. Like, it's possible. You got to do it. Right. And it's hard because it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of creativity. It takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of opportunity, to be a professional. Right. People can write their own personal story from their neighborhood. But can you write the story of a place you've never been to, and you can totally make up the characters in the world? That's hard to do, man. That's what a lot of these showrunners and writing do. They come into worlds they've never been a part of, and they start writing about, NCIS New Orleans.
Yeah.
Showrunners probably never been to New Orleans other than, partying and meeting people. They have no idea, but they have to go, okay, I'm from, NYU and New York, and now I'm writing about NCIS, New Orleans.
Yeah.
So what do I do? What does that world look like? And then you got to nerd out. You got to dive in. You got to dive deep, understanding like what it is. Like I've done, doing shows like the Bad Girls Clubs and all that. I couldn't tell you a bad girl. I live in Brentwood, California, and I may be Hispanic, but I have no idea what the world is.
Yeah.
Now I do a little bit, but you know what I mean? But I have to go, hey, this audience wants to see this. They want to hear this type of music. They want to see this type of thing. These girls are going to be rough, right? But I always say that, our job is to make them be heroes, because that's what they are to us. And I can tell you, I am friends with 98% of them because I helped them. I go, we made their lives better because we gave them an opportunity to make a little extra money, to start seeing how the world really is from there and what they can actually do to better themselves and come out of that cycle that they're in. And that's where I say, that's where you can benefit from. And I think that's where you have to look at the world that you're going inside there and be a part of it. And then you have a positivity to it, because all documentaries are point of view. That's all they are. Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure Trump's got his point of view of the Capitol riots, and I'm sure, the liberal Democrats have their point of view of the Capitol riots, right?
Yeah.
And you have to understand that's all people are doing. We're bringing their points of view into the situation. And so that point of view is dangerous. It can have danger, it can have power. So, it's important to understand, that when you're doing a movie or you're doing a documentary, you're showing the movie from someone's point of view, because you have to find a character.
No, yeah, I think that's so right, man. It's all about, well, first off, yeah, like you said, it's all about getting the job done and also being able to just tell that perspective, tell that story from, the way you want to tell it. You know what I'm saying? So I think those are very key things, and you shared a lot of good advice. A couple more questions before we end. Like I said, you already shared a lot of good advice. I'm curious, what would you like to instill upon those who are trying to get into the industry now? Like I said, you already spoke on a lot of great things, but what is one thing that you feel like people miss when trying to join a production or get into the industry? And what's one of the common things people miss, and what advice would you give them?
Yeah. First thing I would say is get your personal life in order. Make sure you got a passport. Make sure you got your driver's license on point. Make sure that you got your personal life in point. Because I can tell you right now, when people, one of the big advantages I had was when I first came out was I had a passport. So I was the guy, we're going to shoot in Colombia. I got a passport. I'm ready to go. Right. So make sure that your personal life is on point and you're ready to be that guy that you can get the call and go anywhere, be anywhere, do anything. Or the girl, by the way. Second thing is learn how to make presentation decks. Like I'm telling you right now, if you're the person that can make a presentation deck out of slides or PowerPoint and Photoshop and all that, you're going to have an advantage, because no matter where you're going to be, presentation decks or storytelling, all things are going to be super important. Number three is, I would say, like I said, nerd out in your story. Make sure that you are reading and really exploring, elements of story, but don't be the one of those people that come to the set and talk about it all day. You know what I mean? Really get nerded out, really do your homework. I am reading a book on story now. You know what I mean? It never stops. You just got to be always working on your chops. It's like practicing an instrument or practicing your football plays, right? If you don't study the playbook, you're not going to know what the playbook, you're not going to know what to do. So be that person that's doing that so that when you're there, you can get an understanding. I would say also be a good ear hustler, right? And be the person that says, hey, I'm willing to stay later. I'm willing to do whatever. People, I don't want to work later. Well, then you don't want to really be here. And that's really a hard statement to say because people go, well, I'm tired. Yes, you should do not be tired. But you also got to be the person that they can turn to and say, man, Eric's been, just saying, hey, I'll work on my off time and I'll go do that and I'll go check this out and I'll go do this. And the best example I can give you is that I started working on the real world. I worked in movies before I ever worked in reality television. But I worked on this movie in Toronto, super long. The director was super jerky. And a friend of mine offered me a job on the real world. I'm like, well, I'm not really sure what the real world is. I've been in Canada for whatever. But I started working on it. I would work, they had 6-day work weeks. I would work every single day on set. Knowing that we're doing a follow documentary, I was trying to make it like a script, not scripted. I was trying to make sure that all the elements of movie making were a part of that. We had an establishing shot, we had singles, we had coverage. On my off day, remember, we worked 6 days. On my 7th day, I would go to the post-production house and I would watch the editors edit what we were shooting. And they're like, why are you down here? Because I want to know what we're shooting, what is going to be turned into a scene. I want to see it for myself, right? So then I would go back to the house and we start filming, keep continuing filming. And the director would send everybody home at like 2 a.m. He goes, Rick, you want to stay and shoot some more? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I picked up one of these cameras they had, right? Now I have some photography background, but these cameras, I'm like, all right, okay, I get it. Boom. I shot all the best stuff from 2 to 5 o'clock in the morning, right? No one forced me, no one made me, but you know what? And I wasn't trying to be a kiss ass either. I was like, if I'm here, I'm here. If I'm in it, let's go. Yeah. Right? I'm in it all the way. I'm in it to win it, whatever we got to do. No complaints, no nothing else. Those things just help me just kind of go, okay, what are we making? What does it look like? How are we gonna be efficient? What's going on? And so you really start piecing those things together. And when you're on the floor shooting something, you're like going, oh, there's a story happening here. He likes her. This is what's happening. This is a situation. He's trying to have sex with her or whatever. I'm like, all right, let's check it out. Let's find out what's going to happen. Right. And you're filming it and you have to be the person by yourself that are getting the wide shot like any other movie. I tell people all the time in reality or documentaries, like, just because we're a reality show or documentary doesn't mean we don't want to look like, Grey's Anatomy. We just don't have the time. Our goal is to make it look good. So I don't want to have crappy establishing shots. I want interesting composed things. I don't want to have crappy singles of the characters. Use your lens, get back, like that. Eric can tell you, like, I was like, hey, adjust the frame of that interview that they shot. We had it, right? Because it's in our control. We control it. I control the shot. So, or the people control the shot, right? So I don't want to have shitty shots because we think it all has to be raw. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And that's where your personal pride, and people go, well, that's experience. I'm like, man, I was the same way at 22 that I am at 52. I'm telling you right now, because I'm like, no, okay, we want to do it. We want to look good. We want to be on point. I used to go on the other season of Real World House. I would go in the house, I'd turn off. I'd have a serious conversation happening in the dining room. I would go and turn off the other lights and have a pool of light where they were sitting because I wanted to make the conversation super cool.
Oh wow!
Right? No one told me. I'm just gonna create a mood. So I went, turned off lights, created this pool of light with the Coit Tower in the background, and I shot it from the edge of the corner of this pool of light. This very intimate conversation happening. Right? Why? Because in my head, I'm making a movie. in my head, I'm like going, man, this is a really deep conversation. This conversation needs to have some intimacy to it. And so, yeah, we started doing that. So that's where I tell people, like, be a fan of your favorite movies. Be a fan of like identifying films and things that maybe you're not really used to, but you're like, man, that's really shot really well. Or that's really done in an interesting way. And copycat. That people have been copycatting these things forever and ever. Yeah. Right? If you're lucky enough to be original, cool, but copycat it. I do every time for a new show. I always take a movie and say, guys, we're making Dreamgirls. The colors, the sound, the vibe. We're in this world. This is the color palette that we're painting in. Yeah. And that helps people because now they understand kind of what we're all trying to make. Right? We're making Dreamgirls. Yeah. And so now everybody understands we're going to color the show or how we're going to frame things or we'll all have that meaning to it. And it doesn't always work out that way, but you're like, okay, yeah, this is what I want it to feel like and look like. I just think those things are important, and sometimes you can do some breakthrough things, but you need partners for that. You need that cutting edge DP that really has an eye for something you've never seen before. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's cool, let's do it. But I know I'm not a DP. Now I can compose a shot. I can get basic lighting, but I'm not a DP, right? That's the thing. You got to know your lane a little bit and say, hey, what am I not? Yeah. I know this can happen, that can happen, all that. So all those things are important.
No, true. I like that. Being proactive. What was the term you used? You said ear hustler?
Ear hustle. Yeah, the ear hustle all the time.
I like that, man. And,
yeah.
What's funny about taking stuff that you liked and kind of recreating it. Like there was this documentary called "Everything's a Repeat." And it was focusing mostly on like the sampling of music and how so much music has been sampled to the point that like you may hear a song and be like, oh, that song sounds really good, but it was recreated like 10 times before you heard it. You know what I'm saying? Before like the next generation hears it. So I think that's very good. Like Quentin Tarantino does it all the time, like in Pulp Fiction, all the other movies. Like he takes themes that he liked, growing up and then incorporated in his movie. So art replicates art. I feel like so I think that's so. Before we get to the last two questions, how can people reach you? If any socials or any way for people to, I guess, just see your work or I guess get connected to what you're doing next, any Twitters and stuff?
Honestly, I keep everything private, and here's the reason why: because I get crazy people hit me up all the time. Yeah. So I always have cast members like that. I keep all that stuff really down low for Road Games, only because I get some crazy people. So for the social, for the most part, I'm just don't call us, we'll call you.
Oh, cool. Well, that's good to know. It's good to know. Well, yeah. So I know you've worked on so many incredible things over the years. I'm curious, what's something that you're working on now that you can share? Something that isn't too top secret, or something that you could tease a bit. What's some of the things that you're working on?
Yeah, I think right now I've just been approached by a couple of people to do some feature docs. So there's one feature doc we're talking about doing about the Southern California kind of Baja 1000 racing community. I'm not real familiar with it, but I'm interested in what that. I'm always interested in subcultures and groups, and what would that be and what that look like for them and why do they do it. I think that could be something that's super interesting. And then I have a gentleman that's producing a vehicle, another feature doc that's producing a vehicle for this car thing called SEMA, building a car. But really it's about him and all these things that he's kind of going through to kind of get this done. And it's really, for him, the story is one last chance at redemption, because he's basically putting all his money into this car build competition that's super famous that he could lose everything. And like I told him, I'm like, I'd be willing to consider it to me, it's a story of a person, not a car. And to be honest about it, I don't know if he sees it that way, but that's actually even better for me, because we're the house, we can never lose, right? So, I just want to I'm always honest with my subjects, because like I said, when you're showing the warts and all, it's important. And I think, for me, that'd be super interesting character study more than it is a car build, right? And so that's where I say, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That could be that could be an interesting story. So I think those are a couple of things I'm looking at right now of trying to dive into, and I think, you know, for me, just trying to be a little more entrepreneurial in making some things, because I think because of the business side that I understand, you know, you understand, you know, how you can do it and what those things can be, and excited.
Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing those works, to seeing that doc and stuff. It seems like some cool projects. The one thing I want to end on,
Mhm.
you told a lot of awesome stories, a lot of great stories from your years of experience. What's like one of your favorite moments or favorite stories that you could share with us from your times working in production? A favorite moment, a moment that made you laugh. Pick one of your favorite moments that you can share with us.
Wow. I mean, I think one of the craziest moments was you know, I helped create the MTV's challenge on MTV. And so one of the early years, we actually were going to have the cast members jump off of the Stratosphere in Vegas. Stratosphere is that big, tall tower, and they were going to bungee jump off the top of there. So we essentially, you know, every time you do a contract like that, I had some MIT engineers come in. We were building stuff off the top, and we always have a weather day involved on it. And so in this particular day, we had actually started having people jump off the Stratosphere. We actually had set a record we had the cast members drop almost 600 and something feet, and they kind of hit terminal velocity up the top, right? It's like jumping off the top of the Stratosphere. So the Stratosphere company had essentially, we had some wind kick up, and you know, after a certain wind element, it's dangerous. You know, you know, that's why we have a weather day. That's why we have provisions in our contracts. So they basically said no. We said we're not going to do it. So then that night, they basically were getting press from around the world, you know, of these people jumping off the Stratosphere tower. The next day, they're like, well, you're not going to be able to finish your mission. Like, we've kind of had enough. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You know, we're not a bunch of like 20-year-old kids out here. So I called our lawyers back at MTV. They hooked us up with like the top attorney, and we went and got an injunction in court that morning. And the judge basically said that if anybody tries to stop you, you have sheriffs with you. So we were all waiting across the street. We had the injunction in our hand, right? And we stormed the castle. We stormed the Stratosphere, showed the injunction, did it. We finished our thing. I think we got 4 or 5 people fired from there. But you know, it was really one of those things where, you know, we held up our end of the bargain, right? We had, you know, we had safely put on this thing. We had done it. You know, this is a legit business, and we're going to, you know, do that. And we got it done, and we got it finished. And I think it was one of the funniest moments, because in the end, you know, the looks on their faces were pretty precious.
Well, that's so awesome, man. And like I told you before, like Road Rules is one of my favorite shows. The Real World Road Rules Challenge, one of my favorite shows. Like CJ and Wes and all of them, like they were some of my favorite characters to watch in the show. So it's been an absolute pleasure being able to talk to one of the people that were in charge of putting that team together and making that creative happen. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate, you know, talking and sharing, because I think it's really important that, you know, people get inspired and really follow their dreams. But just understand that, you know, go at it and do the work, and get your hands dirty, do the work, and you're going to come out on the other end really looking pretty good. So my best to you, best to the team, and happy to do that.